Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's installment of Poetry Hour Notes from the Field. My name is Marcelo Hernandez Castillo, and I serve as the Yuba and Sutter County Poet Laureate. It's great to be back after a short hiatus for some summer craziness that is always bound to happen. Be sure to check out some of the summer events going on at YubaSutterArts. Lots happening with some new plays. Also, the Peach Festival is coming up next week, I believe. Make sure to come and check it out. So I wanted to, go ahead and jump right into it. For those of you who are listening, I appreciate you tuning in to hear what I have to say. It's summer right now, and I'm here at home. I'm here at my office. I'm teaching over the summer, but at the same time, I'm doing a lot of things that I wouldn't normally do throughout the rest of the year. I think I have a lot more time with my family, with family outings, family parties. Haven't gone on a vacation this summer yet. But either way, this time has made me think about family and about family time and the role that family plays in our lives. So I wanted to continue this broadcast as a way of recommending books around, this time around, a particular topic. And I guess this topic is of this month is family. And hopefully turn people on to some books that they might not have otherwise come to. These are 3 books that I've taught in the past, and each one has kind of a different take on the role of both our older generation, both our parents, our grandparents, or chosen family as well. I guess not the latter in this sense, but for good or for bad, we are shaped by the people who came before us. Not even just the people who raised us, but the people who made decisions that we were never even aware of before our births had some kind of formative after effects that led into our lives. So that's the theme, I guess, of this month. Again, given that it's summer, given that summer is a time when we supposed to spend a lot of time with our family, with our kids, with our siblings, or with friends. The waters are dangerous right now, but still, it's a time where people are spending going out of the ways. And so, yes, it is a series about recommending these 3 books, but it's also just to read from them. And so the 3 books, I'll tell you right away. The first one is an older book, but timeless and classic. I might have already even mentioned it, but it's a book that I teach almost every year. And more, I guess, some of the things that are happening with my family, more and more this book changes every time that I read it, depending on my family situation. This is Rose by Lee Young Lee, his first, and I would say greatest book of poems, with the exception of his prose book, his memoir, The Winged Seed, which I have back here somewhere. I just didn't grab it. And I guess the second one is, I'm missing the jacket because I took it off, but it is Dear Memory by Victoria Chang, published by Milkweed. This is recent. I think it's 2 years ago, 2021, I believe. 2021, yes. So very recent. Victoria Chang preeminent poet, and hear her investigation into memory, into her past, into her mother, her father, her grandfather's lives. And the last one I'll read from is this book called Fanny Says by Nicole Brown. And it was released in 2015, so that's 8 years ago. That might seem like a lot, that might seem like nothing. It's all still contemporary. But I guess there are three different views. There are three different views on family, and there are some overlaps, but each unique in their own way. I read Li Young Lee for the first time probably in undergrad, but it was just a poem that was anthologized, that it was like one of his more famous poems, the one that The Gift is what it's called, about his father teaching him how to remove a splinter from his hand. I'm going to read a poem from this book to kind of put that in the air. And this is from Rose by Li Young Lee. It's called Early in the Morning. While the long grain is softening in the water, gurgling over a low stove flame, before the salted winter vegetable is sliced for breakfast, before the birds, my mother glides an ivory comb through her hair, heavy and black as calligrapher's ink. She sits at the foot of the bed. My father watches, listens for the music of comb against hair. My mother combs, pulls her hair back tight, rolls it around 2 fingers, pins it in a bun to the back of her head. For half 100 years she has done this. My father likes to see it like this. He says it is kempt. But I know it is because of the way my mother's hair falls when he pulls the pins out easily, like the curtains when they untie them in the evening. And I'll read the opening poem. Well, not the opening poem, but the most famous one. Li Young Lee had a very tender and difficult upbringing with his father, who had a large looming presence in his life, and he respected him, feared him, loved him, in a way that I think he has always been trying to understand. His memoir opens with a dream he had of his father coming back from the dead, walking through thousands of miles with blistered feet to come and take a family photo. The Gift. To pull the metal splinter from my palm, my father recited a story in a low voice. I watched his lovely face and not the blade. Before the story ended, he'd removed the iron sliver I thought I'd die from. I can't remember the tale, but hear his voice still, a well of dark water, a prayer, and I recall his hands, 2 measures of tenderness he laid against my face, the flames of discipline he raised above my head. I was going to continue reading, but I can't help but stop, given that it's the space where I can do it, or I can talk a little bit about what's happening and why this is maybe one of my favorite poems, and turn people onto Li Young Lee is these phrases before I continue the poem. So this is kind of just like a stop. The phrases that we hear in terms of how he constructs metaphor as his hands being two measures of tenderness. Not that his hands were tender, but that they were two measures of tenderness, that they were the units by which you measure tenderness, that they were tenderness themselves. They were the thing. He laid them against my face, the flames of discipline. And so we were reminded of the harshness that a father's hands can be in terms of discipline, but also the love and care with which they are attending to him, gently removing a splinter from his hand. It continues. Had you entered that afternoon, you would have thought you saw a man planting something in a boy's palm, a silver tear, a tiny flame. Had you followed that boy, you would have arrived here, where I bend over my wife's right hand. Look how I shaved her thumbnail down, so carefully she feels no pain. Watch as I lift the splinter out. I was 7 when my father took my hand like this, and I did not hold that shard between my fingers and think, metal that will bury me. Christen it Little Assassin, or Going Deep for my heart. And I did not lift up my wound and cry, death visited here. I did what a child does when he's given something to keep. I kissed my father. So there's so much happening in this poem. His father is giving him a gift. His father is giving him the gift of what he has done, giving him the gift of this tiny flame, giving him the gift of what at first as a child you think everything's going, like this is the worst, I'm going to die, when you get like a splinter and you're in mortal danger, but your parents know that it's just a splinter. But they don't diminish your worry. Your worry is valid. The actual danger, less so. But your worry is valid. And I think Liang Li's father knew this. And the gift here is not only the splinter and relieving the pain, but also the knowledge of how to remove a splinter tenderly without causing pain to the person. And in this case, in his adult life, it's his wife. So I'm always astonished by this poem about how much it's walking on eggshells, but also it's also walking on like marshmallows, if that makes sense. So continuing our poems about family, Fanny Says is a book by Nicole Brown, which chronicles the life of Nicole's grandmother, Fanny. And she's a character. I'm sure we all have characters in our lives who we say, you know, not even in a movie could they exist. Well, Fanny, Nicole's grandmother here, was just that person who it's difficult to even imagine her existing in a movie. She's quite a character. I met Nicole actually twice now, and I told her every time, you know, how alive and full of just wonder I'm filled when I hear when I read her her book about her grandmother. So this is that opening poem, and it's titled For Our Grandmothers. All of them who clutched their pocketbooks, who hid the money for the light bill in the Bible, who counted, and recounted stacks of towels. For our grandmothers who stored the white wax of bacon grease in a coffee can, who tossed table salt over their shoulders, who had rules about stepping under ladders, eating supper's last biscuit, and the acceptable distance hemmed up from a girl's knee. For our grandmothers who would not let us call her grandmother, who wanted to be called anything but grandma, for they were too young to be a mother when they became mothers. And then, you. For our grandmothers who made us pick our own switch, who cooled hot coffee on a saucer, then sipped from its chipped edge. For our grandmothers who would not call a cicada, but a locust, a 13-year plague of them, making an apocalypse of June. For grandmothers who considered a tabby not a cat, but a tail switch hex that would slip under your bedroom door, take your breath from you, then smother the baby in its sleep. For our grandmothers who taught there's a right way and a wrong way. Right is right, wrong's wrong. Ain't no sense in between. For grandmothers who emptied their husbands' fish gut buckets and bore enough children to run out of names. For my grandmother who snatched me from the nurse and wrapped me in her tea-length mink coat. It was cold, almost spring, and though I was bruised yellow with jaundice, she took us out of that hospital, settling her youngest daughter, a teenage mother, carefully in the back, with no shoulder belts or infant seats or airbags. It was simple. She held me up. She held me up front for my first ride. She turned the key. We were on our way. She took us home. So, a dedication to our grandmothers and everything that they endured to make our lives even possible. Technically, none of us would be here without our grandmothers, but also in whatever emotional, spiritual, intellectual feats that we have had are due to the strong women in our family, to the kind of care that we receive from our grandmothers. And not every grandmother is perfect. I never met either of my grandmothers. On my mom's side, my grandmother passed before I was born. On my father's side, I was too young to really remember, so I don't remember. And I don't think you can see it. Oh yeah, right here. Wait, over here, right there. That's a picture of my great grandparents, my great grandfather and my great grandmother. And we all have these older picture of these people who back in the day, you know, people were very stoic in taking pictures. It was a formality. They had to borrow they had to borrow these clothes from somebody to look. And the suit that my grandfather borrowed was overalls, were these denim overalls with a leather jacket. Denim, you know, being a material for the working class, but for poor rural people in Mexico, denim was the texture of formality, and not manta, for example. And I think I'll end today because, again, I'm trying to keep these under manageable time. Victoria Chang, this book is called Dear Memory, but it's also a poem in epistles in which she directs each section to somebody in her life. Dear grandfather, and she speaks directly to them in a way that perhaps we can't do in life. There's sometimes there are difficult situations that we find ourselves that it is difficult to tell that person, even if they are still living, even if they are still alive, to tell them those things that we want to tell them most, either for pride or for shame. We sometimes wait, and then it's too late. And then they pass, and we never are able to make peace with them or tell them that we love them. So this is a brief letter to her grandfather. Dear Grandfather, by Victoria Chang. And I'm going to start about halfway through and just read a short excerpt. So it kind of cuts right into it. So there's some context that is missing, but here it is. Father and mother were supposed to be lucky. Lucky people are supposed to live in the future. The cost of being so lucky is that you never learn how to acknowledge pain because you're always lucky. You should always practice being alive, what you have. Nothing should ever be wrong, go wrong. The problem is that the space between how you really feel and luck is always shame. Recently, I visited your son, Father, in his facility. So she visited her father, her grandfather's son. I walked in on him standing in the bathroom. Sometime in the last few weeks, he had forgotten how to use the toilet. When I took Father downstairs to the patio, he stood by a plant and put his arms out in front of him as if willing it to grow. I watched him lean into the plant and then away, back and forth. From afar, he looked like he was doing Tai Chi. I wonder what kind of craggy twigs still exist in his brain. It's hard to watch someone who used to have a switchblade as a mind finally kneel down. Yesterday, I showed him a picture of your dead wife. His dead wife, his grandfather's dead wife would be, his father's mother. His father who is her father, the father who is suffering from dementia. So she showed him a picture of his mother. His normally glazed eyes looked, and he said, "Mama." Then his eyes began to water. And here's the one line that I will forever remember. This one and another one I'll share, but this one specifically. She says, "Maybe our final memory will be of our mothers." When Father was stronger, I once handed him a basketball and told him to shoot. And told him to shoot it into the hole in front of him. After about 6 tries, one went in and we all cheered. Then another and we cheered again, jumping up and down. My own voice startled me. Its Americanness, its loudness, its confidence. The sicker Father gets, the more American I become. Maybe our desire for the past grows after the decay of our present. When the present is more than we can hold, it turns into history, and the future turns into water, the water between your countries. There's a buzzing in my ears now. Where there was once silence, now there is lightheadedness, and no one to answer all the questions I've never had before. When people leave a country, they leave everything: the land, the smells, the people. The objective is simple: to build a better life without the incisions of the past. A family tree ended. People no longer sleep beside one another. Time stops and a new time begins to never cross. When Sergei Pavlovich wrote, "Must be true." Those of us displaced indeed live in a moment that lasts a lifetime. Grandfather, here she's again talking with her grandfather, to her grandfather. Grandfather, I feel your son will join you soon, by which she means she fears her father will die soon. I hope there isn't such a thing as your heaven and our heaven. I hope Father can meet you in the one borderless afterlife. I hope he won't have to travel to see you. I hope there are no suitcases there, no more packing, no more migrants, no more caravans, one language. I hope when Father sees you, his words will return. I hope then Father can tell you about the 60 years that you missed. And maybe when I see you both, I can ask you about your first wife and Ye Pin. So that's the brilliance of Victoria Chang. Hoping that in the end there isn't two forms of heaven. In the end, thinking maybe our final memory will be of our mothers, even if we are lost to dementia. And our desire for our past grows after the decay of our present. So when our present begins to decay, then we long and idealize the past more. Relevant to anyone you ask today, of so much going on. I think that's where I'll end it. I went over a little bit, but I'm really glad if you did join us. I hope you enjoyed the 3 books that I recommended for this month. Rose by Li Young Lee, Fanny Says by Nicole Brown, and Dear Memory by Victoria Cheng. Dear Memory has an accompanying poetry book. It's a memoir, but the accompanying poetry book is called Obit. It's an obituary. It's written as an obituary. So again, please join us next month for our next installment. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Be well, be safe, and keep reading some poems.